Over at some zombie apocalypse town, our protagonist is held down by a chick asking him what his name is. She's dressed like she's trouble, and she's holding a whip like he's in trouble, while also asking him how he broke into their base. He replies that, for the 1000th time, his name is Song Chao, and he was just passing by. She doesn't believe him, though, because there are monsters roaming around. Yet he casually carried 2 barrels of tomatoes all by himself. She asks him if he injected some kind of anesthetic into them, but before she could finish asking, the girl behind her already took a bite. The girl, Sister Shenjame, spits it out immediately and gives her the results. She tells her that she's tasted it, and it has no other pharmaceutical ingredients except for a little pesticide residue. The main girl, Sister Shenjiayao, gets annoyed, and Song Chao asks if they could just let him go. Shenjiayao taunts him with her whip and calls him naive for falling into their hands and still trying tricks. She presses him some more for answers, acting like the bad cop that's trying too hard but with no good cop. He starts to feel that maybe he did walk into an apocalyptic place, and he was so lucky that he was very cautious, and if it weren't for the 2 sisters who captured him, he could have been zombie roadkill by now. Shenjiayao snaps him back to reality by snapping her whip and asks him to talk before she snaps up his butt. He tells her that he understands, but absolutely no one sent him here. He tells her that he came from another base and wants to trade with them. As long as they can help him do stuff, he would offer them tomatoes. Shenjiayao is surprised that he has even more, so she asks him what exactly he wants in exchange. She asks him if he's a slave trader, and her silence basically answers that question. Her sister cries from behind that the tomatoes are too sour, and she wants other stuff like greens and eggs. Shenjiayao asks her where she expects to see eggs since the chickens are mutated and the eggs inedible. Song Chao is surprised by this. Simple things that he can provide for himself, like greens and eggs, are like buried treasure here. For him, it seems a little bit too late for this world. After they finally unchain him, Song Chao asks what he can even get here if he brings them more tomatoes next time. He explains that he's got sick parents to care for and a sister who needs school money, and since he somehow ended up here through that weird portal, he figures he might as well get rich from it. Shenjiayao plays along and says she'll check the list. She mentions energy modules, laser pulse cannons, and even jokes about trading 4 to 6 pretty girls if he's interested. Song feels that he must have heard that wrong, because food for girls sounds like something straight out of a twisted, weird fairy tale. Shenjame notices the look on his face and instantly assumes he's planning to start a slave trade. Song Chao quickly explains that's not it. He just wants something that actually holds value, like jewelry, diamonds, or gold. Jiayao gives him this sarcastic side-eye and asks what he even plans to do with that stuff when the world's already falling apart. She points out that those things stopped being valuable ages ago, and asks who he really is. Song Chao thinks hard for a bit and says that his base is stocked with supplies, and people there still trade for items that make their women happy. He suggests a deal. He brings them food, and they give him jewelry, silver or gold in return. Jiayao considers it and asks how many of those non-radioactive tomatoes he can actually bring. Since her group has plenty of food, she says he can drop by often as long as the sisters have things that interest him. She also makes it clear that they don't do special services, just business. Song Chao figures they could at least offer him some protection while he's around. The sisters take a moment to think it over, and Jiayao finally agrees, but says they need a proper price. She sets it at 10 kilograms of gold for every bucket of tomatoes or something close in value. She adds that she can't carry too many of those useless shiny things anyway. Song Chao has no problem with that deal. Jiayao smiles, takes a tomato, and bites into it. The taste hits her so good it almost feels heavenly. Over at their dusty little base, Jiayao happily admits that she hasn't eaten anything this fresh in years. She's basically in tomato heaven, and after sealing whatever deal they made, Song Chao finally decides to do something. He raises his hand like he's about to make a speech, but instead says he's heading out. The sisters stop him though. Apparently, he can't just wander off whenever he wants. The area is full of half-dead mutants that still roam around, so if he gets eaten, that's on him, not them. Song Chao asks if he can at least go to the toilet. Jiayao waves him off, clearly done with his nonsense, while she and her sister continue enjoying the fresh tomatoes like they just discovered the fresh produce section. The MC walks off relieved, glad to be away from those two for a bit. As he steps out, he starts thinking things through. Everything that happened, how he even ended up in this weird world. There's no way it was random. He finally figures there's only one possible reason: the shiny golden ring on his middle finger. It doesn't look like much, but something about it feels off. It's the only strange thing that's happened to him recently anyway. Out of curiosity, he starts twisting it around his finger, and suddenly, it lights up like a flashlight on steroids. A beam of white light shoots out of the gemstone, and the air around him starts spinning like a blender. Before he can even panic, he gets pulled straight into a glowing funnel surrounded by bright sparks and total darkness. The next thing he knows, he's spinning like laundry in a washing machine, still holding the ring as everything flashes around him. Then, just as suddenly, he lands on a huge green field with hills everywhere, peaceful, open, and way too normal after everything he's seen. He realizes he's back home. The house is right there, untouched. Song Chao looks down at the ring again. The glow is fading but still kind of pulsing faintly, almost like it's alive. He remembers buying it not long ago, from a chunky old guy with a long mustache and a beard that looked like it could hide snacks. The dude had sold it to him for only 199 yuan, calling it the Ring of Heaven and Earth. Song Chao thought it was just some scam trinket, but now he's starting to think maybe that weird old man wasn't just some regular street vendor after all. The old man runs off with a heavy bag on his back while the city guards swarm after him, and Song Chao feels a stab of regret for missing him because they need that old man to learn something important. So he starts looking around fast. A woman calls out from behind and drags him back, furious, and saying their family must return the money right now. She says her son needs cash for university exams, and time is running out. Song Chao pleads with Aunt Zhang. He asks for a few more days and says he will pay everything back. He remembers that his father has a lung illness and his mother had a brain bleed, and they need money for treatment. He borrowed too much and he is counting on the deal with the two sisters. He promises to repay in 3 days with extra interest, but Aunt Zhang does not believe him. She says she has waited 5 years and that the family should have saved more. She even says his parents would be better off dead. Song Chao loses it and punches the wall hard. He says if she keeps insulting his family, he will kill her. Then he forces himself to calm down and tells her he will return the money tomorrow with interest and to leave him alone. Aunt Zhang fumes and warns that if he fails, she will hire people to make him pay, and Song Chao steels himself, deciding to use this chance to give his family a proper life, not later. Outside the market, he fills 2 big buckets with vegetables and stacks the buckets in a large crate. Half the job done. Then he slips his ring out, opens the portal again, and it is time to go. Song Chao is actually relieved this time. He ends up in the same spot as before, which means the portal worked again. He's about to celebrate until a cold pistol barrel greets his forehead. What a warm welcome. Shen Jiao doesn't waste a second before asking if he's been constipated all this time since he vanished yesterday without a word. Song Chao quickly explains that he just went to get food. Since the last time he checked, both sisters were drooling over the idea of vegetables and eggs. Once he opens his box, both of them freeze like kids spotting candy. Right there in front of them sit 2 full buckets of fresh vegetables and a big box of eggs. Shen Jiame's jaw drops first, and she looks about ready to faint from happiness. She even starts drooling for real, like her brain forgot how to behave. Shen Jiao, meanwhile, just crosses her arms with that usual mix of suspicion and attitude, as if she's wondering if this man robbed a grocery store in another universe. Song Chao tells them to relax and go eat before the food spoils, and that's all Jia Yao needs to hear before she yells at him to get cooking. So he brings out a big pot and starts preparing everything while the sisters sit like royalty waiting for their meal. Once the food's ready, they dig in like it's the best thing they've ever tasted. And honestly, given the apocalypse setting, maybe it is. While chewing up, Jia Yao looks at him suspiciously. She wonders if he's hiding a secret stash of food somewhere near the base, because in this wasteland filled with mutants and zombies, not even grass survives. Shen Jiame is too busy being excited, happily chewing up like she hasn't eaten in weeks. Song Chao assures them that he's just good at stocking up when he goes out, so there's no need to worry. Once the meal's done, Song Chao tries to bring up the deal again. He wants to know more about the vault they mentioned before. Jia Yao looks a bit uneasy and admits the vault is far away, and even worse, they can't open it with their gear. Song Chao is disappointed since she promised him 10 kilograms of gold, and he was already dreaming of the payday. Shen Jiayao admits he has a sharp memory, then adds that while there's no vault nearby, there is a villa district close enough, and those rich folks most probably have the kind of loot he's after. Song Chao immediately says they should go check it out right now, but Jia Yao, looking as lazy as a cat after a nap, says they just finished eating and should let the food settle first. He gives her a look like, seriously? She sighs and finally stretches her arms, saying that he should think of this trip as a post-meal workout. She tells GMA to stay and guard the place, while she and Song Chao handle the mission. Song Chao is surprised that GMA won't be joining them, wondering if it'll be too risky with just the two of them. But Jia Yao assures him that they already cleared out most of the local mutants anyway, and that with her around, he's not likely to die just yet. She smirks and tells him that once they reach the villas, he can take whatever he likes. That alone is enough to lift his mood finally. a mission that sounds like it might actually pay off. Song Chao finally starts introducing himself properly, explaining how he somehow ended up traveling from the present to the future. He's still a bit shaken up by it all, trying to understand how everything suddenly looks like a sci-fi movie. Just a few minutes ago, Shen Jiayao had tossed him something that looked like a weird gadget and told him to wear it. Apparently it's a soldier's watch. He stares at it like it's alien tech, turning it around in confusion, wondering what kind of contraption this even is. Shen Jiayao looks at him like he just admitted he doesn't know what Wi-Fi is. She asks if he's seriously never seen one before. He awkwardly admits he's not a fighter, hasn't seen a single monster, and basically has no idea what's going on here. That's when she finally explains that this watch is some kind of multifunction survival device. It tracks location, detects radiation, warns of danger, and even keeps contact with teammates. Basically a smartwatch if Apple went through an apocalypse. She tightens her collar and activates her helmet, then tells him they've got to move fast. They walk up to what looks like a floating car, but it's more like a super motorcycle. Song Chao stares at it like he just saw a unicorn. The thing doesn't even have wheels. Shen Jiayao hops on effortlessly, and she can't believe this guy has never seen one before. Song Chao looks even more suspicious now, hinting that he's from this world, but his reaction says otherwise. She's clearly not buying it, and tells him to sit tight and not say anything dumb. The vehicle suddenly lifts off with a loud spark, and they have liftoff. Song Chao panics a bit and grabs Jiayao tightly from behind to avoid flying off. She turns her head with an annoyed look, not thrilled about the sudden back hug, but he's holding on for dear life because it's his first time flying in what's supposed to be a motorbike, and it's definitely not going smoothly. Jiayao warns him that if he dares to move his hands again, she'll blow them clean off. They speed through a hilly area, and Song Chao starts noticing how strangely quiet everything feels. No zombies, no chaos, just silence. Jiayao explains that they've cleared this zone several times, not just the zombies but also the mutant animals, which is why it's peaceful now. Just as he's starting to relax, something huge and fast attacks, a giant mutant rat with glowing red eyes and teeth sharp enough to bite through metal. Song Chao freaks out and tells her to watch out, while the rat leaps straight at them. Before he can even blink, Jiayao pulls out her gun, raises it, and blasts the rat midair like it's nothing. The creature falls behind them, smoking. She doesn't even look back and tells him to calm down because it's just a mouse. Song Chao is now very curious about her weapon, so he asks how much a gun like that would cost, already thinking about upgrades. Shen Jiayao says that the gun is basically worthless, but if he's serious, he can try to trade for one at the Linjiang base, maybe swap it for one of his precious eggs. In this messed up zombie world, Song Chao is shocked that one egg can get him a whole blaster. Clearly, eggs are the new gold. He tags along with Shen Jiayao to some fancy villa area filled with huge houses, tall trees, and a shiny river flowing nearby. They stop in front of a giant modern house that looks like something billionaires lived in before the world went to trash. Song Chao just stands there with his mouth open, staring at the fountain like a tourist. Shen Jiayao suddenly pulls out her black pistol and waves it around like she's in charge. She says to follow her because moving alone is asking to get eaten, and she admits they haven't been in this area for a while, so better stay sharp. Song Chao doesn't argue. He just follows behind like a confused intern on his first day. They step inside the mansion, and even though it's spacious and fancy, the walls have bloodstains all over. Song Chao still can't stop eyeing the expensive sofa like he's planning to carry it home. Shen Jiayao tells him to stop drooling over furniture and keep moving since they have to head back before dark. They go upstairs to check the master bedroom, both kind of excited like they're on a treasure hunt. The room's huge and clearly used to belong to one of them rich folks, but there's nothing special lying around. Song Chao sighs, ready to move on, thinking this place is just another big room with no loot. Then Shen Jiayao suddenly gets this idea and stretches her leg out, kicking the glass wall beside them. Song Chao is stunned because she just revealed a hidden door behind it. He has no clue how she even guessed that, but Shen Jiayao looks calm like it's nothing new. She says she used to live in an even fancier place, so this kind of setup doesn't surprise her. She fires at the door lock and it opens to reveal a big armored safe with a golden ship statue inside. Song Chao feels like Shen Jiayao just opened sesame. It's shiny, beautiful, and clearly worth a fortune. Shen Jiayao tells him to take what he wants so they can move on, and he grabs the ship like it's his long-lost child. His face lights up as he holds that pure gold masterpiece. Right next to it, he spots a separate little box with a ring inside. It's small but looks way too valuable to ignore, so he pockets it too. For a moment he's feeling good, rich, lucky, and ready to leave, until something feels off. The air suddenly changes. and his gut tells him something's wrong. He quietly asks what's happening, but Shen Jiayao just motions for him to stay silent, while she stands by the door, gun in hand, fully alert and ready for whatever's coming next. Song Chao asks what's happening, but Shen Jiayao is already peeking out the window, scanning the streets like she's done this 100 times. She turns on her soldier watch, and a blue screen pops up on her wrist. The look on her face changes. She's seen someone she recognizes. Song Chao gets curious and asks if she knows them, wondering why she suddenly looks so tense. She explains that those people outside are bad news, a bunch from the south suburbs who once tried to sell her and her sister as slaves. They even came to the west side a few times looking for them. But right now, those same guys are getting swarmed by a bunch of giant mutant wasps, fighting for their lives. Song Chao can't tell if he should feel bad or laugh at the irony. Even nature itself seems to hate these guys, as the storm messes up their escape plans. He activates his own soldier watch, and a screen appears showing info about the mutant wasps, big, ugly, and dangerous. While those thugs are busy getting stung to death, Shen Jiayao considers attacking, but she notes that none of the enemies have seen them yet. After a moment, she decides it's better to leave quietly. She tells Song Chao to follow, steps on the window frame, and jumps down without hesitation. Her hair flies behind her as she lands smoothly. Song Chao stares down nervously because the window's way too high, but he has no choice. He jumps, lands badly, and twists his ankle. He grumbles in pain while Shen Jiayao looks back and asks if he's okay. She squints at him, realizing something's off. The guy clearly never got the gene-strengthening fluid most survivors use. He limps after her, asking if there's a way to get that fluid. Shen Jiayao says yeah, but it costs around 30 eggs, which basically means it's expensive as hell. She cuts him off and tells him to stop talking and run, since staying here means they'll get spotted next. Before they can get far, there's a loud explosion nearby. One of the same dangerous men who was just fighting the wasps suddenly spots them and yells for help. Shen Jiayao freezes for a second. She didn't expect this twist. After everything they did to her before, she doesn't trust them at all. Still, she hands her gun to Song Chao and tells him to cover her. Song Chao's heart sinks a whole lot because he's just trying to survive, and now he's somehow in the middle of a fight he never signed up for. Time's running out and things are getting wild. Shen Jiayao tells her partner to hurry up and grab a gun, but Song Chao just stands there holding a pistol like it's an alien object, saying he's never even used one before. She looks at him like she's questioning all her life choices, wondering how she ended up stuck with this guy. While he's still figuring out which end of the gun is which, she already pulls out 2 grenades, clearly tired of waiting. Turns out they're not the kind that explode, but flash and smoke grenades made to scare off bugs. She throws them anyway and says he better pay her back later. The grenades go off and blind the thugs chasing them. One of the guys even covers his eyes like he just saw the light of God. Shen Jiayao and Song Chao use that moment to make a run for it, but one of the goons regains his sight and fires. The bullet flies straight toward Shen Jiayao. Her armor activates just in time, but the bullet still punches through and hits her arm. She's bleeding now, but she insists it's not fatal. Song Chao panics, calling out her name dramatically, but she tells him to keep shooting back and not to hesitate one bit. They're running under heavy fire, with Shen Jiayao holding on to her injured shoulder, when a bunch of mutant wasps decide to join the party. The enemies start shooting at the air, cursing their luck, while the wasps swarm right above Shen Jiayao and Song Chao. Shen Jiayao pulls out a blaster and fires at them mid-run, blasting the air, asking the bees to buzz off. She shouts at Song Chao to move faster, then jumps onto her aircraft motorbike, which lifts off the ground. Song Chao struggles behind with his bag, but Jiayao stretches out her wounded arm and asks him to grab it. He catches her hand just in time, and they pull off their escape as the bandits shout after them, swearing they won't get away. But Jiayao and Song Chao are already flying high, leaving those guys to eat dust. Song Chao apologizes and admits he's never done anything like that before, promising that next time he'll do better and actually keep up, instead of stinking up the place like a Call of Duty bot. Shen Jimei starts bandaging her sister's wound while Shen Jiayao tells him to forget about it for now and just focus on learning how to shoot properly, because right now he's about as useful in battle as a water gun. She takes out a special medical balloon thing and presses it against her shoulder. It makes a quick hiss, and just like that, the wound disappears. Song Chao stares like he just saw magic, wondering how a bullet wound healed in seconds with just 1 injection. He starts thinking that if their medicine's that good, maybe it could even help his parents. He decides to head out, saying he'll work more on food prep and sharing next time. Shen Jiayao warns him that those southern thugs could show up any time, asking if he's really sure he wants to leave now. But he says he has no choice, because there's something he needs to handle himself. Shen Jiayao doesn't look too thrilled about it, but she lets him go. He promises to bring even tastier stuff next time, then walks off with his bag in hand. Once he's far enough, he hides behind a wall and activates his ring, opening a portal again and not giving him Green Lantern's powers, unfortunately. What he doesn't realize is that Shen Jiayao is spying nearby, watching the whole thing. She sees him vanish into thin air and just stands there annoyed, saying that these southern guys are always up to something, and now her armor's busted because of them. Armor's super important in their world, so she's already stressing about how to fix it later. Shen Jiamei's voice pops in through her earpiece, saying the guy escaped. Shen Jiayao tells her to hurry back, then drops her damaged jacket armor to the side, deciding to deal with it later. Sitting there, she calls Song Chao a walking headache and starts thinking about what to do next. Meanwhile, Song Chao finally reaches home, feeling relieved and confident that selling this golden statue will finally help his family live better. Later, before evening, he walks into a fancy shop where a tired-looking female worker stares at him like she's already had enough of her boring life. He coughs to get her attention and leans on the display case. She frowns and says he's been standing there for ages, asking why he's even here. Song Chao proudly says he's got real gold art to sell. They actually do buy gold, but only with official receipts, and they don't take items without a verified origin. So he leaves and tries another shop, refusing to give up. But luck's not on his side at all. At 4 o'clock, he gets chased out of one store accused of stealing. By 5, he's thrown out of another, and by 6, he's rejected again. It's been a non-stop cycle of bad luck. Finally, he walks into a small gold shop that pays cash on the spot, but the owner offers him only 100. Song Chao refuses, of course. He won't take less than 300. By the time it starts getting dark, he's still got the gold and no buyer. He sits on a bench outside, lost and frustrated, never imagining that having gold could be this useless. Then a man wearing neat pants and shiny shoes walks up beside him, asking how much gold he's selling. The man invites him to his own shop, and Song Chao, out of options, decides it might just be worth a shot. The man welcomes the MC into his shop. He calls it the No Questions Asked Come and Go Antique Shop, and he introduces himself as the store manager, Zhou Fuyuan. The store is very well arranged with tens to hundreds of valuables around, acquired with little to no questions asked. He asks Song Chao to show him the piece he's selling, and he whips out his golden sailboat, which amazes the man with its glamour. He says it's in perfect condition and can be sold for normal gold prices, so of course he's up for it. He inspects it a bit, and he confirms that it's real gold, very good material, and workmanship. The man thinks for a bit and finally comes up with a deal. He says that he's a fair businessman and never deals with swindling people, he just follows the general price of gold and art. He measures it and tells Song Chao to just think of it as a friendship between them both, and adds that if he has any more valuables which he wishes to sell, he should bring them there. Song Chao gets a notification and checks his phone to find out that he just got paid 740,000 yen. Now the MC is very happy because for once in his sad, broke life, he can finally consider himself rich. After earning money through that profitable haul, Song Chao goes on his way to finally pay off his everlasting debt through a mobile transfer. However, the old lady doesn't understand technology, so she calls her son, Zhang Jun, to deal with it. He shows up, looking like a guy who's doing a good job in consuming his mother's money. He's surprised that their debtor is willing to pay off his bills so suddenly, after so many long years. But anyway, they begin the mobile transfer, but things don't go as smoothly when scanning a QR code. Even when the transfer succeeds, Jun's first instinct is to call Song Chao and his entire family worthless bumpkins who don't know how to work a mobile phone. Of course, this harsh remark hits Song Chao hard. He mentions how he repaid his debt of 10,000 yuan. Not only that, he repaid 12,000, stating that the extra cash is interest. After all, it's his way of showing gratitude, and if a man can't show basic etiquette, there's no difference between the person and an animal. But more importantly, Song Chao makes it clear that if he insults his family one more time, those words will surely be his last. That bone-chilling remark startles the two Zhangs. Jun finds it outrageous that Song Chao would threaten them, but that is nowhere near a threat to Song Chao. He questions if he should just finish the job, and this cold aura finally makes Jun stand down. When the day finally draws to an end, Song Chao is relieved that he's finally paid off his debt. Plus, he has more than enough cash to give himself and his family a complete makeover. But within those thoughts, he wonders how the survivor sisters who led him to fortune are holding up, and decides to check up on them later. The next day, Song Chao heads into the apocalyptic world. The moment he announces that he's back, he's greeted with a gun to the face. The two sisters who were ready to obliterate the intruder, but Song Chao manages to beg for his life. He wonders why they're so uptight, but Shen Jiayao refuses to answer his question. Instead, she questions why he's back after running away last time. Song Chao gives them some dumbass excuse about going to see his sister, and Shen Jiayao is surprised to hear that, and suggests that he should bring her. However, it's obviously far from it, so he explains that she'll be a little uncomfortable. Shen Jiayao asks if she's mutated, but Song Chao explains that his so-called sister is actually very antisocial and hardly trusts anyone. But enough of that topic. Song Chao reveals that he's brought some bacon and sausages and asks if they'd like some. Of course, no one passes up the opportunity to get free food. One meal later, Shen Jimei is pleased to have such a nice meal in a long while. She playfully tells her sister to marry Song Chao so they won't have to worry about food anymore. But Shen Jiayao bonks her on the head and warns her not to be such a sellout. A brief while later, Shen Jiayao recalls something. She announces that they'll have to head to the Lingjiang base to search for supplies and replace her wrecked combat suit. She asks Song Chao if he'd like to come along, and he replies, yes, much faster than he can think. At this point, he's been fascinated by the world's tech. Things like genetic enhancement drugs, combat suits, and laser guns will be very interesting purchases to him. Shen Jiayao smirks after hearing the eagerness in his voice, but Song Chao states that he'd like 10 of each, which takes her by surprise. She warns him that the gene enhancers available are the low-grade ones, so it won't be useful to have more than one. But Song Chao explains that he has a bunch of friends whom he can share them with, so it's not a problem. With that said, Shen Jiayao states that they'll be leaving at 10 o'clock, and he'll definitely have to bring the amount of food that'll match his request. And of course, Song Chao has no problem with that, and is glad to make the trade. The time for the raid finally arrives, and Song Chao arrives with 2 huge suitcases filled to the brim with all kinds of fruits, vegetables, and meat. The sisters are absolutely stunned after seeing so much food all in one spot, almost like it's a blessing from the gods. With that, Song Chao has delivered his end of the deal, and he's looking forward to all the fancy look he'll be getting. Shen Jimei brings up the thought of marrying him to her sister once again, but Shen Jiayao tells her to perish the idea. They all get on the sci-fi looking vehicle and head on their way. Eventually, they come across what looks to be some kind of base with heavy fortifications. Song Chao sees that and asks if that's a military base, which Shen Jimei confirms it is. She explains that it's the Lingjiang base, a military stronghold guarded by 3 layers of solid walls, minefields, and electric fences. It's also a human settlement, and a place where no mutant would dare approach. At the base's gate, security checks are carried out on an incoming queue. The visitors will have to scan their cards before they are granted access to the base. Meanwhile, Song Chao asks how much food is needed to gain e-money, like a gacha addict prepared to blow his life savings. So Shen Jiayao explains that a single unit will cost half an egg. With that said, she gets her bracelet scanned and passes the check. The nearby guards make some cheeky comments since the twins have a new male visitor now, but she tells them to shut it and get back to work like good little slaves. Despite that teasing encounter, they're all welcome to Lingjiang base. As the gates open before them, Song Chao is stunned by the scenery, the gorgeous sight of the sci-fi themed encampment. In fact, he's rather surprised that this futuristic-looking utopia can exist in a post-apocalyptic world. As the team makes their way, Song Chao spots a sign stating that weapons aren't allowed. He figures that is dangerous, but Shen Jiayao assures him that the ghetto and business districts are completely safe. However, Song Chao has his doubts about security. He takes a look at the poor and homeless on the streets, and he braces himself for whatever might happen within Lingjiang of the post-apocalyptic world. As they move through the town, some fat dude is out there auctioning a lady for 10 e-money. Song Chao hears this deal and believes that 5 eggs for a beauty is an absolute steal, but Shen Jiayao interrupts whatever fantasy he was having by telling him to mind his business. Of course, he denies even having such dastardly thoughts and says they should go get some e-money first. Even though everyone in the vicinity is human, Shen Jiayao cautions him that they'd still do anything for something to eat, and that includes taking everything he owns when his guard is down. But anyway, they arrive at the Bureau of Exchange, where Song Chao can get some cash. Before they head in, Shen Jiayao instructs him to not say anything and act indifferent. That way, people won't look down on him. As they approach the exchange counter, one of the attendants asks if they got anything good to sell. Shen Jiayao displays one of the massive bags, and the man's jaw drops at the sight of how huge it is. And since it's why they arrived there, she tells the man to convert it all to e-money. The exchange attendants are absolutely shocked to hear that. Not only do the big bags contain eggs, they learn that it contains fresh vegetables, meat, and all the things that any post-apocalyptic survivor could dream of. With how much stuff has been presented, the man questions where they got it from. But his colleague advises against that, believing the clients might be working for a prince of some big shot base. So, the visor man takes that advice and agrees to process the transaction. And while that happens, Shen Jiayao warns them not to pull any tricks. It takes a while to process, but the bags of produce were worth 470 units. With that amount of cash, the team decides to go shopping. Shen Jiayao decides to treat Song Chao to whatever he wants since he's been pretty helpful. They make their way out, talking about their spending plans, but little did they know that some hooded figure has tagged them as targets. So the mysterious fellow, cloaked in a camo attire, knows he has to inform his master named Tiger. This unknown minion eventually returns to his master and informs of the new targets that bagged over 400 credits. He adds that the people exchanged with eggs, fruits, vegetables, and 3 kilos of pork. On hearing pork, Tiger is surprised since it's a rare item to find. So Tiger, who seems to be living the life, is now curious about these individuals. The other man states that there are 2 ladies and 1 dude, and they are shopping at Market 1. So with that information, Tiger calls another henchman called Old Six and orders him to send troops to guard the road leading to the Western District. After all, if anyone can afford pork in this world, it means the person is absolutely stacked, and our Tiger here is looking for that bag. Meanwhile, Shen Jiayao aka Song Chao if he really wants to go to the market. Of course, he isn't changing his mind anytime soon since he's got stuff he wants. So with that agreement, she decides that they'll be splitting up and get back together when they're done with shopping. After they split up, a holographic interface suddenly pops out from Song Chao's watch and greets him. Then it presents itself as an automated interface that will guide him through his shopping trip, as it welcomes him to Lingjiang Base Market. Who knows what kinds of things he'll encounter within it. A moment later, Song Chao goes exploring, and he's fascinated by the huge mechs that the market has to offer. Apparently, the 2 girls had wandered off to do their business, leaving him alone and stranded in the market. He's pissed off by the fact they just abandoned him in the middle of nowhere, without giving him any hints on where to go. As Song Chao wanders around hopelessly, he spots a hologram of an automatic pistol. This floating gun gives him an idea, and that is to arm himself for protection in a post-apocalyptic world. After all, he can't call himself a man if all he does is hide behind a woman. One shopping spree later, Song Chao is fully geared up and believes he's ready to defend himself. While he wanders around, someone calls out his new look. With no surprise, these people are Shen sisters, who also went shopping for defensive gear of their own. He commends their interesting choice of gear, and Shen Jiayao is relieved that Song Chao knows what is at stake. But protection aside, she states that the cash they earned has run out. This fact leaves Song Chao stunned since they did say they had a lot of money. Not only did they buy gear, Shen Jiamei reveals that she also bought some candy, and Song Chao is not pleased in the slightest. While the both of them continue their argument, Tiger arrives at the district and has seen who the rich fellows are. After a day of thrifty shopping, the gang heads back on their hovercraft. Meanwhile, the Old Six fellow watches them, waiting for the moment he and his group will strike. He informs his boss, Tiger, about the target approaching. So with that, it's time to get to action. As the squad prepares to attack, Tiger warns that their targets shouldn't be killed since they're doing this for that sweet money. When the time arrives, Tiger issues the command. His troops begin firing at the hovercraft until it explodes, seemingly annihilating the target. Of course, Tiger is furious with this result, since dead targets equals no money, meaning that they've wasted everything trying to get to this point. Either way, the gang goes to inspect the damage, but they only find the wreck of the hover car. That's when they finally realize it's a trap. The next thing they know, a missile is headed in hot for their location. There's nothing they can do against this, so the missile explodes, wiping out all the people in the area. Meanwhile, our MC squad watches the blazing fire from a distance. Shen Jiamei, the one who fired the shot, scouts the area and confirms that the people have all been taken out. Tiger is surprised by this sudden turn of events. He looks around, confused by what happened, but all that remains is a burning disaster, along with fallen comrades. He then realizes that he was counter-ambushed. No one was actually in the car, and the targets attacked with artillery from a distance. If that's the case, he realizes that the next wave of strikes will hit soon. He quickly rallies his remaining men and orders them to deal with the targets. Meanwhile, Song Chao spots the oncoming attackers from a distance and gives Shen Jiamei a heads up. At this point, she knows they're in a bit of a pickle, since the remaining artillery shells haven't finished charging. Now, she's getting nervous because close-range combat is not her forte. But in a time like this, she remembers her sister saying, "There's nothing good old cover fire can't fix." So she deploys some drones into the air, and now she has more than enough firepower to tackle her opponents. Meanwhile, the attackers make their way up the hill to take out whoever's launching those strikes. As they move up, the guy in charge notices an incoming shot and warns against it. Unfortunately, His partner failed to notice it on time and gets blown to bits by laser beams. After seeing how that person got his head blown off, a lady among the team figures they're dealing with a beam sniper. But before she could add any other thing, her head gets swept right off its shoulders by a wicked beam blast. Now it's down to the Lone Ranger. He questions what kind of savage they're dealing with. He spots 4 drone-looking things in the sky, behind the target. These aren't just regular drones, but levitation cannons. That's when he realizes he's done for, because no regular NPC could use such devastating weapons. And with a smirk from Shenjime, the dude begins screaming in fear. The drones then power up and finally unleash the finishing blow, putting him to an end. But as for Shenjime, the way things turned out only confirmed that her sister was right about having cover fire. Back at Linjiang Base, we have some person who's lighting up a pipe to unwind in a lonely alleyway. This person is that same minion who gave Tiger info on the 3 money bags from earlier. A troop spots him and questions what he's doing there. He's curious about this because that's the same person who sold information to Tiger about our MC's group, yet he didn't go along to get any loot. However, our Mohawk fellow here is a simple man who doesn't really care about who he's working with. Instead, he just lives to get high. It's pretty easy to die, after all. But enough about that. Back on the battlefield, we have Tiger and his troops scrambling for their lives. With fear in their eyes, they look up to find Shen Jiayao cruising through the skies like an angel of death. Now, the hunting tiger is in trouble and is being hunted by Shen Jiayao, who's looking to have some fun. While in midair, Shen Jiayao begins firing her guns and lands every hit like a professional hitwoman. At the same time, she dodges the enemy's shots in midair and delivers sick headshots, all while counting the guys she's taking out. She begins approaching the ground, so Tiger orders his men to take her out when she lands. However, that's when she uses her ultimate cheat code, double jump. The moment she calls out the ability, a holographic platform pops out beneath her feet, extending her airtime. Having such an OP ability was shocking to a few, but either way, she starts to descend, approaching a lone soldier. The dude thinks he's got it, but Shen Jiayao brings out a hidden blade straight out of Assassin's Creed and stabs him in the head. After witnessing that slaughterfest that she calls a warm-up, the remaining troops are gripped with fear, including Tiger himself. After all, they are merely test subjects for Shen Jiayao's new combat gear, and she commends them mockingly for helping her to test it out. But before we see what happens next, we'll go back to 30 minutes before all the song chaos. Song Chao talks with Shen Jiayao through a communication device. She informs him that they'll be targeted, mostly because of that shopping spree they went on earlier. So she instructs her sister to cover with artillery from a distance, while she goes to fight up close. But she instructs Song Chao to stay with Shen Jiame. After all, he's still a lousy fighter despite the cool gear. Shen Jiame explains that they'll use the car as bait and take the enemies by surprise from there. But Song Chao plays the pacifist card and asks if all that violence is really necessary. Shen Jiame strongly disagrees with him and sets the record straight. Their pursuers are looking to rob him and possibly put him through all manner of horrible things. So, she believes it's absolutely necessary to kill them all. And that is exactly what Shen Jiayao is doing. She nimbly weaves her way through the battlefield, slicing and shooting at enemies. One person tries returning fire, but all his shots are deflected by her battle armor. Then she slides across the ground and takes cover behind a rock. After all those fancy moves she just pulled off, even she's beginning to think that she's being a bit dramatic. Shortly, a heavily armored soldier shows up, and he's bringing in the big guns. He charges up his cannon and fires it at Shen Jiayao's cover, causing an explosion. On the other hand, she braces herself from the blast. This move forces her out of her cover, so she activates a kinetic shield and moves in to defend the oncoming shots. The big guy fires his cannon once again at her. This time, the attack hits, and everyone believes she's pretty much dead after witnessing a massive blast. After that, the soldier orders the others to find her body within the smoke and flames. But out of nowhere, he gets hit by a laser beam. The one responsible for it is none other than Shen Jimei, who's still offering long-range support. Just as you'd expect, Shen Jiayao isn't dead, and she commends her sister for the wonderful assist. With that, she charges forward to take care of the remaining soldiers. While Shen Jiayao takes out the remaining guys, Tiger swears under his breath, aiming his revolver with a shaky grip to kill Shen Jiayao. Eventually, he steals his resolve and fires the gun. She, on the other hand, notices the incoming bullets and tries to use her armor to protect herself, but she gets hit in the process. Song Chao and Shen Jiame watch in terror, fearing that their teammate is dead. At first, Tiger is relieved that the threat has been taken care of, but it doesn't end there. Shen Jiayao somehow recovers and shoots at Tiger's gun, causing it to explode in his hand. When that happens, he starts screaming in pain. However, his subordinates rushed to rescue him before the next shot could finish him off. As for Shen Jiayao, it turns out her armor spawned just in time and saved her from dying. From those subordinates' screams, she learns the name of her assaulter and talks him down on his foiled ambush attempt. At this point, Tiger is trembling with fear as Shen Jiayao tauntingly challenges him to come after her. Tiger, unable to fight, swallows his pride and decides to retreat. He finally realized he wasn't dealing with fat sheep, but vicious wolves in sheep's clothing. After that heated battle, Shen Jiayao scans through the battlefield that is riddled with various burning and dead corpses alike. After scanning with her high-tech helmet, she learns that there are no more enemies, and realizes that they must have retreated. Shortly, Shen Jimei and Song Chao rush to check up on her. At first, she's relieved to see them, but she falls over the moment her helmet disappears. Shen Jimei dashes to catch her, leaving Song Chao to wonder what could be wrong. But they quickly learn that the attackers were using armor-piercing bullets, and one of them got Shen Jiayao on the abdomen. With the current matter, she suggests that they head back to Linjiang Base where they'll talk to Dr. Xu, a doctor who's known to treat wounds like that. Eventually, they arrive to meet the doctor, and she is surprised that Shen Jiayao was sent to the hospital for miscalculating her shield's strength. Apparently, this doctor, named Xu Jing, is a senior doctor in Linjiang's hospital, and she found Shen Jiayao's predicament somewhat funny. Putting the details of the injury aside, Xu exposes that Shen Jiayao has fallen in love with a certain rich and stupid man. However, Shen Jiayao doesn't even deny the claim. With how things have gone, she knows there's no use in denying the rumors. As for the others, Shen Jiamei has been worried, waiting outside the operation room for her sister. Meanwhile, Song Chao is very interested in some pods. After observing him, Xu finds it strange that Song Chao is looking at fairly common equipment, like it's the greatest invention ever. She can't help but wonder who he is exactly, but Shen Jiayao refuses to answer that question. Anyway, after asking some question about her gear, Xu asks Shen Jiayao if she'd like anesthesia. She refuses to use it since anesthesia takes time to regain sensation, especially since there's a big show coming up. However, Xu isn't keen on letting her go that easily, especially with her injury. She makes sure that Shen Jiayao remains put while she forcefully operates on her to remove the bullet. Meanwhile, at some other location, Tiger arrives with a missing hand. His subordinates rush to check on him, even scrambling around urgently to fetch some medicine. The girl tries to assure him that the medicine will arrive shortly, but Tiger calls the two subordinates idiots. He questions if they see what's wrong, and that's when the guy realizes there are no caretakers around. So with that, Tiger informs them that there are intruders in the base. The moment he says that, some officers in strange uniforms show up and surround them. The mysterious people forcefully capture them while Tiger talks with their leader. Apparently, the person behind this raid is a familiar face who's known as Snakehead. After seeing who the culprit is, Tiger questions what Snakehead could possibly want. Snakehead takes a knee and simply explains the fact that his team went after Shen Jiayao, which has put him in trouble. Of course, after hearing that, the captured guy is furious since Snakehead is the same person who handed them information in the first place. The person goes on, mentioning how many of them died, but his head is blown off just before he can utter another word. After that terrifying moment, Snakehead basically says he was just disciplining the guy. However, Tiger vows that his boss, Lone Wolf, will be after him since he's from the Southern District. This name is familiar since Lone Wolf runs the Southern District. However, Snakehead explains that if anyone goes after Shen Jiayao, some of the other bosses will be furious. And since this recent event happened, he concludes that the Lone Wolf fellow was dunked in cement and died. Even after that, some of them didn't think that was enough punishment, so they asked the King of Hell's men to help carry his things. With how hopeless the situation has become, Snakehead finally sums it up and tells Tiger to transfer his credits and property to him. Back at the hospital, Song Chao curiously stares at a pod with some liquid bubbling inside it. Xu meets up with him, noting that he's interested in the gene enhancement fluid. When Song Chao spots her, he asks how Shen Jiayao is doing. Long story short, she's doing fine after the minor operation, and Shen Jiamei is looking after her. So, Song Chao is relieved to hear that. Out of the blue, Xu asks him if he'd like to try genetic enhancement, which alerts him. But of course, he doesn't back down from the offer and asks how much it would cost. Xu blankly states that it costs 800 credits, which is way on the expensive side for Song Chao. After hearing that comment, Xu decides to lay down some facts on the genetic enhancement. It is considered one of the most important inventions of the era. Thanks to it, humans have been able to survive the mutated creatures, tolerate high levels of radiation, and also have enhanced physical capabilities. So she educates him that the gene enhancement drug isn't just mere physical enhancement, but the ultimate cheat code to life and the foundation of survival. That said, she questions if he still thinks it's just an overpriced life hack. She gets his answer right away because Song Chao jumps right into the pod, ready to receive the enhancement. Not only that, it turns out Shu's grand speech worked so well that it earned her a 500% profit from him. But anyway, while that goes on, she marches on to check Shen Jiayao. When she arrives at her ward, she learns that she's vanished and left a letter saying she'll pay next time. So with that, Shu finally decides that it's no more Miss Nice Doctor. Back to Snakehead, he stands around, feeling great and accomplished for the day. Then one of his troops comes asking if his decision was actually okay. As to what exactly? It's the decision to leave Tiger alive, but Snakehead is confident about the matter. After all, Tiger's followers and suppliers are gone. Besides, they're just lending a hand to the bigger groups, so there's not much they can do. Snakehead knows that there's nothing else they can do since they've already done their part. Then a question arises from behind him, asking if the people who hired Snakehead had given an account of the company. This question comes from Shen Jiayao, who has business with Snakehead. When he sees her, he mentions the fact that she was injured, but that aside, they talk about the fight that went down. However, Shen Jiayao brings up the fact that someone sold armor-piercing rounds to the group they went against. While this brings up some concerns, the laughter between both of them go on. But anyway, Snakehead asks for the next job, but Shen Jiayao states that she only wants to discuss business with him. With this talk about business, Snakehead confirms from his follower that they don't have much work to do. So he informs Shen Jiayao that she's always welcome to buy information from them. But one aggressive poke to the nose lets him know that she's not here for that. Instead, she wants to propose a business idea to him. Currently, Snakehead's intelligence group spread information to deceive those who are evil. However, Shen Jiayao believes it's much better to control the masses, so she proposes that she'll kill the evildoers, while the intel group snatches their possessions. In addition to that, the things left on the battlefield will be theirs, and the confiscated items will be sold at a discount. Even though the offer sounds pretty enticing, the other person states that they're merely an intelligence group. However, Shen Jiayao isn't joking around here. She then dangles a golden card, stating that their share will be deducted if they make more mistakes like what happened earlier. A short while, the two intel guys realize that's the card that contains all of Tiger's credits. Snakehead is surprised by what just happened, but now, he has no choice but to accept the offer. As Shen Jiayao takes her leave, Snakehead's follower asks if he's going to stop her, but he's not. Apparently, there are other people eavesdropping on the conversation. He knew that there was something weird about the whole arrangement. But on another note, we have Shen Jiame, who is some distance away from the location and is watching everything that happens there. As for Song Chao, he awakens after having some strange dream. Seeing that he wakes up in bed means one thing to him: the enhancement procedure is finally complete. He takes a close look at his body and notices that he feels much stronger than before. At first, there's no one around, but the moment he takes a look down there, Shen Jiayao comes in. She questions what he's doing, but eventually decides to give him room to do his business. Later on, Dr. Shu marvels at the result of the enhancement, and the fact Song Chao was concerned about a specific part of his body first. Since the place he lives in doesn't have these hypersteroids, Shu offers to tell Song Chao about the enhancement drugs. In addition to increasing physical abilities, it also enhances the user's mental abilities and senses. After that, there are high-tier augmentations that allow the human body to become indestructible and fight mutants head-on. As for power augmentations, Shu decides to not reveal any information about them to Song Chao. The only thing she warns is that the moment he meets an augmented, he must run. Song Chao gets curious about how dangerous the augmented can be. However, no one has any clue about them. You can't blame them since no one has seen any occurrence of them in Linjiang. Since that didn't go anywhere, Song Chao then asks for the prices of various enhancement drugs so he can buy them. Shen Jiayao tries to speak up about it, but gets silenced by Shu. Next, Shen Jiame mentions how medicine is quite expensive in the clinic, and gets silenced as well. So Dr. Shu explains that high-tier and power drugs aren't available, but shows the stock she has available. Little did he know that she has several things that could probably drain his pockets. Anyway, Song Chao asks if the potions can be used, but Shu explains that they'll have to be adjusted for use first. This makes Song Chao ask if there are any drugs that can be used directly. At this point, he's not ready to give up, so Shu offers him a batch of easy-to-use drugs which are a bit expensive with some side effects. However, he doesn't see a problem with it, and is more than willing to pay 500 credits for it. Song Chao asks how much the high-tier and power drugs could cost, but Shen Jiayao reminds him that their insane costs are why those drugs can't be found in Linjiang. To clarify, a high-tier one starts at 10,000 credits, while the power drug is said to be at least 100,000 credits. Of course, this massive number leaves Song Chao wondering about what he's just heard. Shu asks the sisters what they're going to do next. So Shen Jiayao states that they'll be spending the night there. However, they'll have to pay for it. Shen Jiayao believes that they should have free rent since they're pretty much relatives, but there's no way Shu is allowing that. Shen Jiamei asks the doctor if she usually stays up late, but you can't blame Shu. After all, she has to work overtime just to get paid. As they move along the corridor, Shen Jiayao looks at Song Chao and finds him lost in thought. She figures he might be thinking about the strengthening drug, so she asks Shen Jiamei to head back with Shu. Now that Song Chao and Shen Jiayao are alone together, she wants to give him some advice. She questions if he's looking for the higher grade enhancement drugs, and Song Chao admits he is, but no one's selling them. That's when Shen Jiayao brings up an idea. She suggests that they create a market for it if there isn't one. As long as he has a large enough organization, he can buy pretty much anything he wants. Not only that, the more forces he can get, the safer he'll actually be. While all this sounds like a good plan, Song Chao doesn't know which organizations to join. But then, Shen Jiayao clears her throat and suggests that the two of them form an organization. After hearing that proposal, Song Chao figures that he'll be the one investing money, while Shen Jiayao will be getting the materials. She brought up this idea since Song Chao's not familiar with their land, and probably can't handle their wild food. There are currently 4 leaders in Linjiang who are responsible for the largest forces in the city. However, the one responsible for the incident of the previous day has been silenced. After all, Song Chao is someone who has not experienced something like that before. So as long as he doesn't have a powerful force to protect him, the same encounter from the previous time will break out. After hearing this, Song Chao agrees with what she's saying. However, he doesn't understand why she didn't start her own organization before meeting him. From there, he calls out all her reckless spending ways, like how she spent all the money from selling old equipment to buy food and buying too much of it. Regardless of those brutally honest remarks, Song Chao is still willing to give it a shot and support her in creating the organization. In exchange, she'll have to show her commitment by giving him what he wants. So, with those points made, the two of them finally decide to cooperate together. When that's officially sorted, Shen Jiayao decides to give him the big picture. Linjiang is divided into 4 regions, with each of them having their own leaders and major forces. The eastern region of the city is the transportation hub, and the leader of that area is a businessman named Fatty. The central region is an industrial zone ruled by a leader nicknamed General. The southern region is a place full of slave traders and bandits. It's also the place where the gang that attacked our MC was from. Their leader was originally Lone Wolf, but now he's been put out of the picture. As for the northern region, a region that Shen Jiayao doesn't seem to like, it's a distribution center for all kinds of thugs and mercenaries. Their leader is called the King of Smell. However, that leader has some beef with Shen Jiayao, so she warns Song Chao not to go there. Of course, Song Chao finds her introduction of that area to be a bit off, but either way, he wonders who could be in charge of the western region. That's when Shen Jiayao proudly reveals that the region is her turf. At first, Song Chao applauds the big reveal, but he still wants to know why every other leader is properly stacked with an entire army, but she isn't. To explain her failure, she mentions that the western region has a lot of potential to develop. It's a region that's rich in all kinds of resources and even ancient ruins. But the problem is that the area is haunted by monsters, making it the hardest region to develop. With how poor the place is, Song Chao wonders why other leaders don't just come and take over the territory. But once again, the reason that hasn't happened is that it's her territory. Sometime later, the squad goes to meet Shu, and she's devastated to learn that Song Chao doesn't have the cash to pay up for the medicines. Behind the scenes, Shen Jiamei wonders to her sister if they're really working with Song Chao since he's pretty weak, but they can't let him hear that comment even though it's true. Anyway, Shu is annoyed that she worked through the night to prepare a medicine box all for nothing. So, Song Chao explains that the credits they gained from selling food was used up by a certain duo. Since that's the case, it all rests on Shen Jiayao's decision now. If she accepts to handle Song Chao's bill, she'll have to add up the cost of the medicine with another 20% interest on her already existing debt. At first, Shen Jiayao debates it for a while, but eventually, she gives in and agrees to handle the medicine bill. So with that, Song Chao gets the medicine, the team heads on their way, and Shu goes to get some well-deserved rest. As they leave, Shu is surprised that Shen Jiayao is actually taking responsibility. She's also not as cold as others make her to be since she usually grants discounts to the people close to her. More importantly, she finds it interesting that Shen Jiayao is planning to pull the team together. Currently, Shu is tired of the stagnant situation that Linjiang has been facing, so he figures that maybe pushing back will be fun. even though she might regret it later on. Now we arrive at a city, and Song Chao asks Shen Jiayao for some gold so he can get supplies from his place. This makes her wonder why his base needs so much gold. But it's not just that. Art, antiques, or anything that would have value in a normal human society can be exchanged. But still, the girls are puzzled at why Song Chao's base would need things that are basically considered useless in their society. Anyway, just the three of them can't carry a lot of gold even when they find it. As another idea, Song Chao suggests buying some, but Shen Jiayao knows that's a very embarrassing purchase to perform. So, they're only left with one option. One time, skip later, and the team arrives at some shop. The seller welcomes them with a big smile and is surprised to see the West Side twins. However, Shen Jiayao would like to keep the whole meeting brief. Song Chao wonders where they're currently at, and that's when Shen Jiayao rolls the not-so-pleasant intro. They're currently in a slave market. Song Chao looks around, noting all the slaves with shackles around their necks. But that aside, he states that he'd like 12 people who are skilled fighters, 8 men and 4 women, and adds that they're going to get some gear. Armored vehicles roll through thick vegetation, their engines rumbling as the team moves in formation. Today's mission was a success. They managed to buy a bunch of slaves, though the mood inside the vehicle says otherwise. Song Chao's squad is acting as backup and muscle, part of some carefully planned operation that feels way heavier than it sounds. Sitting in the back, Song Chao feels this weird mix of sadness and guilt. Everyone around him is quiet, completely silent since they got in. The only sound is the hum of the engine and the occasional bump on the road. It's so silent that even he starts to feel uncomfortable. Shen Jiayao explains that it's normal. These people's lives could end any moment, and no one knows what tomorrow looks like, so of course no one's in the mood to chat. Song Chao remembers that Jiayao has always hated slaves, not just disliked them, hated. It's one of the few things she's never tried to hide. She says it again, almost to remind everyone that she hates dealing with slaves. Her tone makes the silence even heavier, like the air itself doesn't want to move. Song Chao looks at the two sisters from behind. They're both calm, focused, and say nothing for a long while as the vehicle keeps rolling down the dirt path. After a while, Jiayao finally says that once they reach the residential zone, they'll get what Song Chao needs, then let him go handle his stuff, and afterward, they'll free the slaves. Song Chao's eyebrows raise a bit. Buy them only to free them? He never thought Jiayao was the type to do something like that. Jiayao asks if he's trying to hint at something. She clearly knows what she's doing and doesn't owe him an explanation. Soon, the vehicles slow down, and the team halts at a strange-looking site filled with metal structures and glowing machinery, like something pulled straight from the Mass Effect universe. The armored trucks stop in front of an old, dusty house. After Song Chao left earlier, the crew searched all the nearby villas, taking anything valuable they could find. Song Chao would keep his gold shipment, while the rest of the loot belongs to them. Once the trucks are parked, everyone jumps out and starts unloading. Shen Jiayao walks up to another large vehicle stuffed with tired slaves and swings the door open, shouting for them to get out like some military general. The slaves look confused and half asleep, and Jiayao commands them to move faster and get ready to work. She starts giving out orders, telling the men to carry out all the boxes from the trucks and the women to clean up the useless junk lying around, so nothing is left behind. She also reminds Song Chao to pick whatever he wants first, and not to make a mess with it. After everyone gathers around, Shen Jiayao tells them to start working, saying there will be rewards for those who do well. 2 old men nearby whisper quietly to each other, saying the sisters have finally started using slaves too. One of them asks what kind of reward she's talking about when everyone knows those collars on their necks can blow up at any time. Shen Jiayao hears that and looks at them, asking if he just called her a liar. The guy challenges her, asking what exactly the worthless reward is. Shen Jiayao then says that if they work hard enough, she might give them freedom as a reward. Everyone stares at her like she just told them Santa Claus was real. Freedom in this messed up world? Shen Jiayao keeps her confident smile that you probably shouldn't trust, and says she's serious. She'll give them freedom, and even proper jobs after that. But she laughs a little, saying they probably don't believe in free meals either anyway. One of the men asks what she's really planning, but Shen Jiayao just waves it off, saying he doesn't need to worry about that. She stretches her hand out toward them, telling them to find out for themselves if she's lying or not. In front of them are several boxes filled with solid gold bars. Song Chao looks really happy seeing that, but Shen Jiayao tells them that everything valuable nearby has already been brought here, so there's nothing left to find. He thanks her, clearly excited, since it's basically a treasure, about 23 kilograms of gold in total, plus some shiny gems and jade necklaces that look rich enough to buy a whole town. Shen Jiayao plans to keep around 6 kilograms of gold just for him, which makes Song Chao even happier since that's a lot for him. Song Chao gets super excited and starts acting restless like he can't believe their luck. Then they start talking about food. Shen Jimei gets all cheerful and starts mentioning beef, milk, eggs, and desserts, while Shen Jiayao says she'd be fine with mushrooms, vegetables, and maybe some rice or noodles depending on what's there. Song Chao agrees, thinking they deserve to enjoy themselves after all the work, and promises to make it all happen. He plans to stay a bit longer this time, but Shen Jiayao says she'll take care of the team while he's gone. As he moves toward the elevator with one of the boxes, he's surprised how easy it is to lift and how much stronger new machines and tech have made him. Like, yeah, the future really is changing everything. And with this kind of strength, he jokes to himself that he could even make money delivering food. He then says goodbye to the sisters before leaving, but Shen Jiamei asks if they aren't going with him. Shen Jiayao reminds her it's not needed anymore now that Song Chao is their partner, so they shouldn't get in each other's way. She then calls the others to go meet the slaves who just arrived to reward them. Shen Jiamei isn't too sure what she just heard, but her sister tells her there's no need to ask questions. The slaves see the sisters walking toward them, and they wonder if they're really about to be freed. Shen Jiayao stands in front of them, telling everyone to pay attention, then shows them a screen where they can see their sale records and a special button that can actually remove the metal collars from their necks. It's clear now that she plans to keep her word. But first, Shen Jiayao says she has one more thing to say. Just a small bit of advice she wants to give the slaves before that. Later that night, in the same old villa, the group of slaves don't believe what they're hearing. Shen Jiayao comes downstairs, confirming everything they've been told is true. She tells them that the rest of them probably already know about her and her sister, the famous West Side twins. The slaves chat to one another, saying that the sisters are kind of famous for living on their own and never needing a team, and that their fame in Linjiang is solid. But it is also said that the sisters hate slaves, so no one has any idea if they can trust her or not. Shen Jiayao states that for whatever reasons of her own, she has to form an army and expand her business. Even though they are slaves, she reminds them that all of them have some sort of talent. Not everybody can fight, and they're not as completely useless as Song Chao before he found the ring, but each of them has some talent which could prove to be useful. She admits that she ransomed them for a reason, and that reason is to provide them with an offer, freedom in exchange for her service. The slaves remind themselves that if they don't, the collars stay on, so what's the hurry? Shen Jiayao sees that and reminds them that there's only so condescendingly that one can speak. She reminds them that her hatred for slaves is no secret among Linjiang residents, but she also makes them aware that she doesn't go back on her word. She next opens an electronic screen with a lock icon on it, taps on it, and to her prompt, one of the slaves' collars clicks open and falls off. The man touches his throat in amazement because he's actually free. Even her sister seems shocked that she actually went ahead and did it. The collars open one by one, and the slaves are finally free. Shen Jiayao tells them they are free to stay overnight at the villa, ponder over her offer, and if they do not want it, they may be taken away in the morning with no strings attached. She assures them that she will be waiting for their answer. The group is confused about what to do. Some think it's a trap, others don't want to go with nothing. One of the men says that he's not going anywhere with that woman, and some of the others seem to be scheming, saying that they're not leaving here empty-handed.